China is officially known as People's Republic of China. China has the largest population in the world with about 1.3 billion people as on July 2012. 1 in 5 people in the world is Chinese. What is all about Chinese literature? Chinese literature is the body of works written in Chinese, including lyric poetry, historical and didactic writing, drama, and various forms of fiction. The history of Chinese literature started in different dynasties. The first dynasty was Shang Dynasty, which is the development of Chinese writing. It is about 7000 to 1050 BC. It is the first dynasty for which there is historical record and archaeological evidence. Zhou Dynasty arose after Shang Dynasty. It is about 1045 to 255 BC. In this dynasty, basic philosophical and religious literature came. And then, this dynasty was contemporaneous to Shang Dynasty. The third dynasty was Qin Dynasty, and it is about 221 to 206 BC. In this dynasty, literary disaster and legalism came up. And then, a big philosophical and religious school in this dynasty was called Muhism. And then, after Qin Dynasty, Han Dynasty came up, and it is about 206 to 220 AD. In this dynasty, the scientific and historical text came up, and then the Confucianism was revived also in this dynasty, like the Confucian text, which was rewritten and republished. The fifth dynasty was Tang Dynasty, which is about 680 to 907. In this dynasty, the early woodblock printing and poetry was developed. And then this dynasty contributed to poetry of Du Fu and Bai.
Dynasty is the Song Dynasty. It arose during the 960 to 1279 before Christ era. Song Dynasty contributed on the early woodblock printing, travel literature, poetry, scientific texts, and the Neo-Confucian classics. The next dynasty after the Song Dynasty is the Yuan Dynasty. It arose during the 1278 and 1368 before Christ era. This is where drama and great fictional novels arise. Yuan Dynasty is the 8th dynasty. It arose on the 1368 to 1644 hundreds, and it focused on the making of novels just like the Yuan Dynasty. Lastly, the Qing Dynasty. It is where novels and pre-modern literature came up. In the 19th century, foreign literature in the West became better known. In the middle of the era, the last of China's 4 classic novels was written called Dream of the Red Chamber. And at the end of the era, modernistic literature developed. After the dynasties, modern era arose. It is during the 191200s and at present. It is more on westernized literature. Of course, the big change of Chinese society that happened with the change of government led to the change in literature. It became westernized and the classical language is not used.
The famous Chinese poets are Li Bai and Dou Fu. Li Bai is one of the 2 major poets of Tang Dynasty. He is also a lover of detachment and freedom. And he is romantic in his view of life and misverse. His works are the following. The second poet was Du Fu, who was a famous realist and poet during Tang Dynasty. His poems reflect the hard realities of war. His works are famous Chinese philosopher. Confucius was a Chinese philosopher and a politician of the Spring and Autumn period. His philosophy is known as Confucianism, which is all about philosophical and ethical teachings. His teachings, preserved in the Analects, focus on creating ethical models of family and others. His works are Book of Odes, Book of Documents, The Spring and Autumn Animals, and Book of Changes. The goal of Confucianism is to educate people to be self-motivated and self-controlled. Poetry has been a favorite literary genre for 1,000 years in China. Shi, Si, Ge, Ku, and Fu are 5 kinds of poems in China. Shi poems are poems of 2 couplet lines and it is usually rhymed. While Si poems have patterns of syllables and tonal patterns. Ge poems are words to a song that can be sung and it is composed by literate and educated composers. Ge means song. Then, Ku poem is about Mongol music and it is a form of operatic drama. Lastly, Fu poem is a descriptive poems that contain both prose and couplets. Modern Chinese poetry broke the traditional forms and adopted some of the Western style. The group of poets who are influential during this time are called Misty poets. The Misty poets were Bedao, Dudu, Gucheng, and Yang Lian. They were all exiled after crackdown of civilian protests. Prose writing in ancient and pre-modern China differed from poetry. Most literary prose works were written in literary classical language. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Water Margin, Journey to the West, and The Dream of the Red Chambers are examples of Chinese classical novels. Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a historical fiction written by Love Gun. On the other side, The Water Margin is a story of Robin Hood, which is more fictional. While Journey to the West is a long tale, which was published by Wei Ching. And lastly, The Dream of the Red Chamber is all about real happenings and it is a sort of soap opera. The history of Chinese theater presents Chinese character indicating dance. The types of Chinese theater are classical Chinese theater, shadow puppet, xiangsheng, and Chinese opera. Classical Chinese theater was developed after religious ritual practices, and it is all about dance, music, and poetry. While shadow puppet play derived from minister seeing his children playing with the dolls as vivid shadows. Xiangsheng or crosstalk is a traditional comic performance stemmed for imitating shows and possibly formed during Qing Dynasty. Lastly, Chinese opera, which is one of the earliest forms of theater and it evolved from folk songs and dialectical music. After Chinese theater, the early plays arise, which include the Yangyan, Taiyao, and Head for Head. Playwrights are Guan Han King, Bai Pu, Ma Ziyuan, and Jing Guangzhu. For conclusion, Chinese really lay a lot of importance on their literature.